Hey guys, how's it going? It's like 11:30 a.m. right now, but I have all the lights off because it's like raining outside. No one's up yet anyway. I don't care. But I realized I haven't talked about The Last Jedi yet, and now it's what, Wednesday? So tomorrow it will have been a week ago. So holy crap, first of all. Second of all, this vlog is probably going to be really long. This is just going to be like my unedited, unfiltered thoughts on The Last Jedi. So if you don't want to stick around, you don't have to. But either way, to get started, to those of you who do not want to stick around for the entirety of my thoughts on The Last Jedi, I will mention, when are the Justice League figures happening? I don't know. When are the Last Jedi figures happening? I don't know. When are Avengers Infinity War figures happening? Well, right now I actually just started yesterday, and they're going pretty well so far on the one figure that I have started on, which is Cap. So that is a thing. Avengers Infinity War progress has officially been made. I put up that tweet yesterday, so that is a thing as well. And yeah. So anyway, The Last Jedi. There's been so much controversy that it's been unreal. I mean, so many people are so conflicted with this film because of the decisions that were made. I should probably mention, we're going to be doing total spoilers here. It's been like a week. You should probably go see it. So that's your spoiler warning. Anyway, yeah, the controversial decisions made by Rian Johnson were obviously pretty insane. I mean, how many media sites and journalists have all been running with the line from Luke, "This is not going to go the way you think"? I mean, that really should have been the tagline for the movie. And I hate to sound repetitive because, God, so many of them have said exactly what I just said. But, you know, for the last 2 years, of course, we've all been formulating our theories as to how we want Episode 8 to go, what's going to happen, whose stories we want to be developed, who we want Rey to be, who we want her parents to be, who we want Snoke to be, you know, how we want Luke's story to go. And in this movie, none of that happened. I mean, if it were up to me, as somebody who grew up on Episode 1, 2, and 3, as someone who genuinely loves the prequels, and I don't have to explain myself, I, honest to God, wanted Rey to be a creation of the Force, similar to Anakin, like this generation's chosen one. I wanted Snoke to be Plagueis, not just because of his connection to Palpatine and Episode 1, 2, and 3 and Anakin, but because it would make sense with his, you know, how the research he was doing with midichlorians and manipulating them, and, you know, the ability to regenerate and all that stuff. He absolutely could have survived Palpatine's assassination attempt on him. He could have, you know, he could have sidelined himself in the unknown regions until Palpatine was finally removed from the picture. It could have, you know, it could have worked into the Star Wars story, you know, the universe story so well. I mean, I could explain my reasoning behind that even more and go in, you know, even more depth of how I thought that could have been implemented. But that's not what Rian Johnson decided to do, as far as we know. I mean, he pretty much has. I mean, everybody and their dog at Lucasfilm has said that Plagueis is not Snoke, which is fine. But apparently, to so many people, the decisions that were made anyway were not fine. But it's like, it's not our decision to make. And that's another thing, too. The Star Wars universe is not a Wikipedia page. You know, it is an ongoing story about real people in this universe during real conflicts. You know, it doesn't have to, everything's not going to connect at all times. That's just not real. You know, and so as a major lifelong Star Wars fan, of course I wanted Plagueis to be Snoke. I wanted Rey to be the next chosen one. You know, I wanted to see the conclusion to Leia's story, which for whatever reason we did not get. I wanted to see Luke go out in a light show against Snoke in Episode 9, but hey, that's not what they decided to do. Instead, they decided to have Kylo kill Snoke, freaking Darth Maul his ass. We still have no confirmed identity for Rey's parents. Luke did not go out in a light show. He went out in a sacrificial force projection that clearly either took so much energy that he just was dying and therefore, you know, decided to become a force ghost, or he just willingly decided that's where he wanted to become a force ghost regardless, whether or not that drained his life force doing that. But anyway, yeah, so even though what I wanted to happen in The Last Jedi, it didn't happen, I wasn't like offended. You know, I wasn't starting petitions to have it removed from canon. I thought that was so funny. Did you guys see that? Yeah. So, I mean, and of course, I have my problems with The Last Jedi. And I posted this on Twitter too. I mean, I think there are, you know, I'm one of those, and here, before I even start, I'm not one of those people who hates The Last Jedi for these things. I actually, I love The Last Jedi. I just recognize that these were problems. I mean, I think the Canto Bight sequence was a total waste of time. I don't really think it developed Finn all that much at all. It was mostly to service Rose, which, and listen, I don't have a problem with Rose as a character. I just think she was given a little too much screen time. You know, we waited 2 years, and okay, you know, this is, we're not gonna, you know, we're not gonna get the exact reveals we want for the characters that have been established now in the sequel trilogy, but I would prefer that they at least be expanded upon, you know, to the fullest extent, rather than create new characters and focus so much time on them when we already have new characters that need to be developed. So I thought that there was, unfortunately, a lack of character development for Rey. Of course, there was character development, but I'm just saying, if the entire Canto Bight sequence was reworked, I think it could have been so beneficial for Rey and for Finn. We could have taken all that screen time and done so much for those two characters. I thought Poe's arc was fantastic. I thought Poe was so much better in this movie than he was in The Force Awakens. I absolutely loved Poe's story with the mutiny and not agreeing with Holdo and her decision making. Of course, you know, I knew about the new canon book that has Holdo in it. I knew she was not a traitor and that she's a good person, all that stuff. So I knew that everything was fine while watching the movie. But I also, at the same time, after, you know, actually just yesterday, I realized, oh, it kind of makes sense that Holdo didn't tell them the plan, because she might have been thinking there was a spy on board, and I never really considered that watching the movie. So that definitely kind of made me rationalize her decision making. One problem I did have, and I'll get back to the Canto Bight sequence in a second, but one problem I did have with Holdo was her sacrifice. And this might have been, you know, I thought that because they had done reshoots, that maybe they were able to do something with Leia. Maybe Ryan had shot an ending for Leia's character. I don't know. He never said. But at the same time, I was just like, wow, that missed opportunity. And again, it might have just been because they didn't have enough footage. That really is what it seemed like it was. You know, we thought we were going to all get an ending to Leia's story. We thought, okay, unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away. So we have to get an ending to Leia's story. Leia has to die. You can't just write that character out. You can't just, you know, in a hollow message say General Leia was on board the ship and it blew up. That was the end of her story. There goes the daughter of the chosen one. That's the end. Bye. But we got all the way to the end of this movie. We had some of Leia's best scenes. By the way, I thought Leia, that scene of her pulling herself back into the Raddus, that was so great. And by the way, I cannot believe Admiral Akbar died. Holy shit. I mean, not only was I getting flashbacks to his life, you know, throughout the original trilogy and Return of the Jedi, but also I was getting the flashbacks from that Clone Wars Season 4 arc when he fought alongside Anakin and Ahsoka and Kit Fisto for Mon Cala. And like, there he goes, just a couple of First Order TIE fighters, like 80 or so years of life, just, there goes Akbar. It's like, damn. But yeah, so back to Holdo. It would have been so perfect, and I'm not the first one to have said this, but I did think of it myself without having read anything. If Leia was the one to go into hyperspace straight through the First Order fleet, how fantastic of an ending would it have been if it was Leia on board the Raddus doing that move herself? Because honestly, that's how I wish Han Solo had went out. I wish he had died going straight into the heart of Starkiller Base. I understand it serviced Kylo Ren, but that scene ultimately didn't do much to service Han Solo, and that's just my opinion for The Force Awakens. And so I think it was another missed opportunity here, and again, that's probably because they didn't shoot any endings for Carrie Fisher. I can only assume at this point, because there was no even, you know, inkling that there was going to be an ending for the character in this movie. You got to the end and there was, you know. So anyway, I think like if Leia was out in space, even though she's the daughter of the chosen one, you know, she was able to use the Force to pull herself back into the Raddus. Maybe she still suffered internal damage from being out in space. We don't exactly know how long she was out there. And then she could have been dying, and then she could have been in the pilot seat because she was dying anyway, and it would have been so great. But a missed opportunity. You know, maybe it was unforeseen and they couldn't do that anyway, even if they wanted to. And that's fair. But it just gets very confusing to me, because they keep saying we're not going to do a digital CGI, CGI recreation of Carrie Fisher. And listen, I respect that. I really do. But I also respect the entirety of the Star Wars story and the Star Wars universe as it has been for the past 40 years. And so I think a character that spans decades like that with Leia deserves an ending and not just an off-screen conclusion to a generation-lasting story. And if that means we have to do a quick CG recreation to wrap up her story in one scene, then, so be it. And that's just my opinion. I realize not everyone agrees because, again, I totally respect not recreating Carrie Fisher, and especially if Billie Lourd and her family do not want it done, then absolutely do not do it. But I'm saying for the story, if her family were to consent to it, then, absolutely. And it looks like somebody is getting home, so I'm going to have to cut this anyway, and we're going to edit. Hey, guys! Now it's bright as shit! Because I changed setting. And, yeah. So, of course, thanks to the rain, Dad came home early, which he never does, by the way. And, had to be right in that 20-30 minute window of time where I finally sat down to do this vlog, so that's cool. We're talking about Leia, and I'm pretty sure I finished talking about her. Got so derailed, man. I was on such a roll. But I guess we'll just go back to talking about the Canto Bight sequence. And listen, it's not like the Canto Bight sequence was poorly done. I mean, I think Benicio del Toro as DJ was a miss of a character altogether. But the actual Canto Bight sequence, I mean, it was fine. I just think it more so belonged in like a new canon comic. I didn't really see its purpose in this movie. I think, the ultimate payoff is at the end when you see the Force-sensitive kid with the resistance ring look up into the stars and see the Falcon go into light speed, go into hyperspace, whatever. And that was it. And I was like, really? It just took up so much of the movie where we could have spent that time elsewhere having developed Rey and Finn. You guys probably aren't used to seeing me without my glasses anymore. But instead we got Rose, and we spent all this time developing Rose, a new character, and I just don't agree with Rian Johnson's decision there. I think, we've been waiting 2 years for the continuation of Rey and Finn's story in the new characters of the sequel trilogy, and we got that for Poe. We really did. But Rey and Finn, I think they could have gone so much further with their characters in this film, but for some reason we spent so much time on this Canto Bight sequence and this Codebreaker crap, and I really just feel like it was a favor to Benicio del Toro for not playing Maul in the 90s, because I thought DJ was just a miss of a character. I mean, I didn't buy into his character. I thought the stutter was ridiculous. He didn't stand out to me as there was nothing special about this guy. So I didn't care. He betrayed them, and I didn't feel anything because, again, I didn't care. I just really felt like Benicio del Toro was miscast in this role as DJ. I think if Benicio del Toro was somebody like maybe a First Order Admiral above Hux, maybe that would have been better. I think I see Benicio del Toro playing menacing roles better than he... I mean, it's not like I've seen all of Benicio del Toro's work. As a matter of fact, I've barely seen any of Benicio del Toro's work. But I just really feel like he should have been a more menacing character in the Star Wars universe and not this DJ character. I just wasn't into it at all. But that being said, it didn't ruin the movie for me. That's the thing. Yes, I didn't agree with the Canto Bight sequence, and I didn't agree with the DJ character. I still really enjoy The Last Jedi overall. These things did not ruin the film for me. Because then you have moments like the Yoda sequence. And the Yoda sequence is so, so great. Ben at this point has, been in communication with Rey. And so all this is happening, and Luke is finally just going to go and burn the damn books. Just, that's it. We're done. Rey has already stolen the books, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, Luke doesn't know that. But when Yoda shows up, and it's so cool how they retooled the Force Ghost effect, so now it's not like transparent blue, and it's actually just like a blue hue. I really thought that was a great tweak of the original Force Ghost effect. I think it's much better, to be honest. I mean, that's kind of how it was in the original trilogy anyway, but there was even less blue now, which I thought was great. But yeah, so, you know, and Yoda has some great dialogue, bringing in Frank Oz, doing some of his best work as Yoda. It was so awesome. I mean, the line, "We are what they grow beyond," was so awesome. "Heed my words, you did not," tapping him on his face with his cane. But most of all, freaking Yoda, a Force ghost, summons lightning from the sky and lights a tree on fire. I'm like, shit. You know, Obi-Wan always said, it's the famous line, "Strike me down and I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." We never actually saw any of that come to fruition. I mean, Yoda was really the one in this movie to demonstrate just what a Force ghost can do. Because damn, and I guess in canon now they're referred to as Force spirits or whatever. So I'm left there wondering, holy crap, if Yoda can use Force, if he can use the Force as a Force spirit to summon lightning, like, good God, what can Anakin do? Damn, Anakin was the chosen one. What can he do as a Force ghost? But I love that scene. I mean, I think ultimately the Snoke sequence, where Snoke dies and then the Praetorian Guard fight, is probably my favorite scene in the movie, followed closely behind the Yoda scene, and then I'd say my third favorite scene is Luke's departure and his final scene on Crate. But yeah, damn, I love the Yoda scene, but the Praetorian Guards were so damn cool. I mean, holy crap. We all knew that they were going to have, like, at least one fight sequence, but I figured it was just going to be like a training sequence with Kylo Ren. You know, just like a first act kind of thing. Like, okay, Snoke is testing him after being beaten by Rey. But nope, Kylo Ren murders Snoke, and then they have a full fight sequence where Rey and Ben team up against the entirety of the Praetorian Guard. I thought that was so freaking cool. The Praetorian Guards, and I mean, in this scene, you don't even care who they are. It's just because they're so damn cool, and all the moves they're pulling off. I mean, they're spinning as they're fighting and shit, and you got all their unique weapons, and they all have different armor, at least most of them. A couple of them have different helmets. I loved all of that. Everything about the Praetorian Guards was so damn cool. It was like everything you wanted the Royal Guards to be in the original trilogy, the Praetorian Guards were in this movie. Makes me wonder if the Praetorian Guards undergo the same training, if not more brutal training, than the original Royal Guards do. If you look up what the Royal Guards had to do to become Royal Guards, it was crazy shit. So there was that. But then the whole Crate sequence, by the way, Crate on Battlefront 2, that DLC is awesome. The map plays so damn well. I don't even care about the progression system or the microtransactions. I'm having a great time on that game, just playing in all the different locations, especially in the Clone Wars. Anyway, that's not the point. Totally just went off on a tangent there, but Crate is damn good in the game. So the entire Crate sequence, and you know what I really appreciated about, again, these are all raw Last Jedi thoughts, so this is totally disjointed. But what I really enjoyed about The Last Jedi were there weren't as many direct similarities to any particular film. You had reflections of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, very much so with Return of the Jedi and the Snoke scene, you know, very much so on Crate for Empire Strikes Back, and, you know, of course, Rey having been, you know, on a remote location being trained by a Jedi Master, all that stuff. But it wasn't like there were any, like, beat for beat plot similarities like there are in The Force Awakens. And listen, I love The Force Awakens to the end of time. I think The Force Awakens is an incredible film, to the point where I'm beyond excited that J.J. Abrams is directing Episode 9, but it's not like I can ignore what is right in front of my face as I watch the movie. I mean, the direct similarities to A New Hope are very prevalent. They're there. But I still really enjoy the film, in the same way that with The Last Jedi, I still really appreciate this entire film despite its flaws, despite the Canto Bight sequence, despite DJ, despite the cuts. That's another thing I forgot to mention. The hard cuts in the first couple acts got a little excessive. When you are in a deep moment with Rey and Luke, and they're talking about, pretty much talking about the Clone Wars. And then you're just cutting around back from the Resistance to that scene to what's going on with Finn and Rose on Canto Bight. It got so choppy, so quick. And I definitely noticed it the second and third time watching the film, because I saw it 3 times, by the way. I went to every year for Star Wars. If you guys don't know, I really don't document it a whole lot on here. But we go to Raleigh. They have a big IMAX theater there. They make a whole event out of it. And it's great. We drive 4 hours over there because there's no IMAX theaters in Western North Carolina. And so, yeah, I saw it 3 times. Twice there at that IMAX, and then actually I saw it once at the same theater where I first saw Revenge of the Sith as a kid and became a Star Wars fan. That, man, it's so weird walking around that theater, because it's like my life as a kid literally changed when I walked out of that theater for the last time. So there was that. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, so the hard cutting. Yeah, it did ruin some scenes. It did, you know, where scenes really should have been more fleshed out and more developed. There were cuts, a lot of cuts, and it was a shame, because you could tell that if we had just extended some of those scenes, we could have developed Rey and Finn so well. And again, if, you know, entertaining the idea if Finn were having his own story outside of the Canto Bight sequence, like if we didn't do the Canto Bight sequence and we did something else entirely, we could have had so much character development rather than all these choppy cuts in the first 2 acts. But again, didn't ruin the movie for me. Really didn't. It's noticeable, but I was still invested. So there was all of that. Really trying not to forget anything before we talk about the Luke sequence. But I guess what else happened in The Last Jedi? There's so much happened. Oh yeah, the explanation of Luke and the fall of his new Jedi Order. Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. Freaking felt like I was playing like a Telltale game or something, like all the different perspectives of how that went down. As Rey is finding out about it, as Ben is telling, Luke tells his own version of it, then Ben tells his version of it, then Rey finally finds out what actually happened, and Luke tells his own version of it, the truth of what happened. And I thought that was great. You know, seeing that sequence 3 different times, explained 3 different ways, that all still, result in the same thing. That was great. That was really cool. And so there was that. I did find myself wondering what happened. Oh my god. My battery's dying. Ugh. Unedited, right? Yeah, that's worked out so well, making amateur YouTuber mistakes right here. So anyway, yes, I found myself wondering what happened to Luke's green lightsaber. I imagine he must have thrown it out, like in the same way that he just tossed Anakin's lightsaber, which is crazy, right? Because, and again, it goes back to these characters are not Wikipedia pages. Luke has given up on rebuilding a Jedi Order. He feels, what he committed, what he did to Ben was atrocious, and he wishes he could have gone back and done it any other number of ways, and so he just tosses Anakin's lightsaber right off of Octo and just into what he probably thought it went into the water. So he probably did the same thing to his lightsaber, I imagine, which is unfortunate. But yeah, it's like Clone Wars fan, loving episode 1, 2, and 3. You've got me freaking out that this lightsaber is still being used in the new trilogy, and Luke doesn't give a shit and just doesn't care that that's the lightsaber that was used by the Chosen One throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars, aka his dad. Oh man, I love that. But yeah, just these characters are not Wikipedia pages; they're real people in the story. So there was that. But then, as I forget everything else that happened in this movie, Phasma. Let's talk about that. Shit. Yeah. So Finn and Phasma's scene together, I love that. Phasma was in this movie just about as much as she was in The Force Awakens, if not less. But this time, she had a much more meaningful scene. And I thought the fight sequence between her and Finn was just so fantastic. And speaking of Finn, like going back to his character not really receiving like as much development as I really feel like he could have had the Canto Bight sequence not happened. I was really confused by how in The Force Awakens he keeps going on about sanitation. Now he was always put on sanitation, yet he was a fully trained stormtrooper you know, who was sent to combat for the first time, and apparently, I think it was in a new canon story somewhere. But Finn was really great in the training simulations, and it looks like he's trained in hand-to-hand combat, and he keeps going on about how he was always put on sanitation and mopping the floors. So that was always confusing. So again, more character development would have been great. But anyway, yeah, so Phasma and her death sequence, as she, you know, after her and Finn fight, thought that was great. But I feel bad for people that read the Phasma book, because I can only imagine after you spend about 12 hours with Phasma and Hux as they work and conspire to overthrow his father in the First Order, I have to imagine that people, when they saw Phasma's death, were pretty underwhelmed, because to my knowledge, Phasma would not have gone out that way. Like they developed Phasma in such a way to where it's kind of like the Battlefront 2 book, Inferno Squad. You know, fantastic book about Iden Versio undercover, you know, rooting out the, you know, what's left of Saw Gerrera's partisans from Rogue One. And then you get to the actual Battlefront 2 game and you realize there's a major gap and disconnect between new canon authors and game developers and the studio, because then the game does not treat the characters with the same passion. And so I feel like the same thing probably happened here with The Last Jedi, where, you know, Rian Johnson not really in contact with the author of Phasma, so people who read the Phasma book were probably pretty upset with how her character went out. I don't know. I didn't read it. I did read Catalyst, though, and I was so glad I did, because that made Rogue One so much better before I saw it. So sometimes it is for the better. But, yeah, so anyway, moving past all of that, I think it's finally time to talk about Luke's death, which is kind of a harsh way of putting it, because, yeah, he died, but at the same time, he died so peacefully. He became a Force spirit, and there really it wasn't like he was impaled by Kylo Ren and died. You know, he willingly sacrificed himself and gave himself to the Force through Force projection, which they had set up with Rey and Ben earlier in the film, and I thought that was great, because at some point Ben mentions the effort would kill you, and then at the end of the film, the effort from Luke kills him, as far as we know. I mean, I surmise that it drained his life force so much to the point that he just gave himself to the Force, and that was it. Or Force suicide is now a thing, and Luke just said, "Yep, I'm done." And maybe he didn't have to die, but he decided to go into the Force anyway. Either way, there are so many people that feel like Legends Luke should have been a thing. You know, he should have gone on to become the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Luke should have done this and done that. But at the end of the day, Luke Skywalker was more of a legend, and he was a human being. He wasn't perfect. I mean, he tried to rebuild the Jedi Order, and he failed too because of one mistake, because he wasn't perfect. You know, no one is, and so when you have these magnanimous expectations for how Luke's death should be handled, I mean, you really set yourself up for disappointment, because, of course, I have my, like I said earlier, you know, I had my own version of how I would have loved things to go. That's not how it went. I wasn't pissed off by it. I wasn't offended. But I actually really appreciated what they did do. I thought that there were a couple missed opportunities here. First of all, it was really cool that Luke was able to project himself through the Force across the galaxy for that long. But ultimately, I found myself really feeling like there was a missed opportunity with the lightsaber choice. Because for whatever reason, Rian Johnson decided to have Luke use Anakin's lightsaber, which had already been destroyed, by the way. Holy crap, Anakin's lightsaber finally got destroyed after like 50 years. But I was very confused because, you know, Luke, he appeared slightly younger. He had the shortened hair. But then, and that was obviously, I imagine, to further enrage Kylo and keep Kylo zoned in on the moment so that he wouldn't pick up on the fact that Luke wasn't actually there, because he would just be so filled with anger, you know, seeing Luke in his exactly how he remembered Luke when he made the attempt on his life. But then I'm like, so then why would Luke project Anakin's lightsaber instead of his own, which is the lightsaber that he used in his, primitive, instinctive moment, attempt to killing Ben. And so I was like, wouldn't it have been so great if Luke was projecting his green lightsaber in his final moments? It would have made sense, a lot more so than Anakin's lightsaber. So, especially because Kylo Ren had already destroyed Anakin's lightsaber with Rey at that point. I mean, obviously Luke probably didn't know that, but it still made no sense that Luke would have projected Anakin's lightsaber over his. So I thought that was very strange for that scene. I really did. But other than that, Luke and Leia's final moments together were great. I thought that was an incredible scene. Loved everything about it. I know what you're going to say. You changed your hair. Loved it. Loved the music. Brother and sister that played from John Williams. Just perfect. So that hit all the right beats. But yeah, then he steps out and he's using Anakin's lightsaber, which I thought was so odd. But the close-ups of Mark Hamill, the rebellion is born today. Everything you just said was wrong. I mean, I thought the scene was great. The standoff shots, just like them on opposite sides of the field, that was great. The bombardment before the scene starts and Luke just brushes it off, that was great. I thought the entire scene was fantastic, aside from the damn green lightsaber not being there. I thought that was so confusing. But yeah, so apart from that, I think that pretty much sums up, my thoughts on The Last Jedi. But one thing I thought was definitely pretty dire was freaking the Resistance being so small now. I mean, damn, the Rebellion was never very big in its prime, but shit, the Resistance is like 20 people now. I mean, there's going to have to be a time jump for Episode 9, I think, now that the situation has become so dire for the Resistance. I have to imagine that there's going to be at least a 5-year time jump or something. You need time to go around the galaxy and amassing numbers to combat the First Order now that the most of the Resistance has been wiped out. So it's definitely very... leaves a lot of questions for how the Resistance is going to be reformed, especially now without Leia, because Leia can't be in Episode 9. That's just the truth. They're going to have to do something. I'm imagining at this point that it's going to be underwhelming in a couple years. So 2019 Ross can let us all know how that goes. But I imagine everyone's going to rally behind Rey as the new Jedi, the new and upcoming Grandmaster of the Jedi Order, now that since she stole the ancient Jedi texts. Even though Yoda feels she doesn't need them. So yeah, now I mean, just a couple other things I realize I'm forgetting. The Porgs, can't forget the Porgs. Thankfully they weren't intrusive. They were hilarious in the moments where they showed up. That they didn't ruin any scenes. I thought the Chewbacca scene with the Porgs was really hilarious and out of place, but I digress. It was fine. And then also, I realized for the Yoda Force Ghost sequence, I didn't mention that I was surprised that Anakin and Obi-Wan weren't there. I mentioned Anakin and as a Force Ghost, but they weren't there. Of all people, you would imagine that would have been Anakin talking to Obi-Wan, or Anakin talking to Luke at that point, but it was Yoda, which is fine. I just, Anakin now being, having been redeemed, now a light side Force spirit for the last 30 years, I imagine he probably would have been the one that was talking to Luke the most in the time between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, but didn't happen. I was really hoping Hayden Christensen was going to be in The Last Jedi. He wasn't. Gotta hold out hope that he will be for Episode 9, or maybe he won't, actually, because it doesn't make any sense at this point, now that we still don't know who Rey's parents are. We don't know if Rey is a creation of the Force because of what she saw down in that dark side nexus beneath Octu, whatever, or if her parents were actually just junkers that sold her for drinking money and are buried on Jakku. We'll never know, or maybe we will in a couple years. But until that point, it now really doesn't make sense for Anakin to appear. So actually, now that I think about it, it's really not going to happen. Now that Luke is a Force ghost himself, it would make sense for Luke to appear to Rey, of course, and I'm sure that will happen. But yeah, now that the potential for seeing Anakin as a Force ghost is just about gone. So I think that's a shame. I really do. But either way, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, officially a thing that is now in the books, and it was fantastic. Not perfect, but it was fantastic. And when am I making figures? Probably after Infinity War. I'm assuming after Infinity War I'll probably go back and do Last Jedi and then maybe Justice League after that. I'm not making figures for Han Solo unless those trailers really get me excited, which I imagine they won't. So I'll have a lot of free time after Infinity War to just basically do whatever I want. I imagine whatever I want will entail The Last Jedi and Justice League figures. So yeah, that's great. But hey, it has officially been 7-8 months since Star Wars Celebration, when me, my friend Joe, and Eric, and Ben, and Corey, and we all camped out for 2 straight nights. First for the 40th anniversary panel to see George Lucas, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Hayden Christensen, and John Williams all on stage in the same hour. And then the day after that, when we were all sleeping on rafts from Walgreens, for the next panel for The Last Jedi, when we got to see Daisy Ridley and Ryan Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy and John Boyega all up on stage, which was with Kelly Marie Tran too when they introduced Rose. That was such a privilege to be at that panel and to have been in that room. And it was so great when Ryan Johnson came in and took pictures and signed for all of us, all 8,000 of us that were on that queue hall line in that massive room. And by the way, there's my badge that Ryan signed. So that was such a great moment. And I'm so looking forward to Ryan's trilogy that he'll be starting now that he has experience with The Last Jedi. And he's very involved in social media. I'm sure he will see where he went wrong, where people did not agree with his decisions, or maybe where he just feels he went wrong, and he'll improve on those areas, wherever he, whatever regrets he might have, if he has any at all. I think that now, especially that Ryan is done and through with The Last Jedi, the potential for what he can do with a new trilogy really is limitless. And I cannot wait to see how J.J. Abrams concludes all of this in 2 years. And so this is the part where I end the vlog, and you guys let me know everything that I forgot to talk about down in the comments below. And yeah, so until 2019 for episode 9, thanks for watching, guys. It's been a pretty extensive vlog. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you guys. And I'll see you guys later. Bye. Oh wait, if I don't vlog again, Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year. Actually, I'll vlog for New Year's, but I don't know about Christmas, so Merry Christmas. Oh, still recording.